It's no secret the Buffalo Bills are expected to draft a wide receiver in the first round of the upcoming 2024 NFL Draft, with many analysts and draft experts mocking different wide receivers of the Bills in most online projections. With Stephon Diggs heading to the Houston Texans and Gabe Davis joining the Jacksonville Jaguars, Josh Allen needs some new weapons, and the draft is the perfect opportunity for the Buffalo Bills to go ahead and get them. This year's wide receiver class just so happens to be one of the best in recent memories, supplying the Bills an even bigger opportunity to land a talented wide receiver in the first round. With that in mind, I figured it would be a good idea to take a look back at every wide receiver to be drafted by the Buffalo Bills in the first round of the NFL Draft. Welcome back to the Bills Bunker. I'm Jake Varco, and today it's time for a history lesson about the Buffalo Bills and their wide receivers drafted in the first round. There's been 7 of them, so get your popcorn ready. It's going to be a bumpy ride. We're going to see the ups and we're going to see the downs. There's going to be a lot of that. Hopefully this year in the draft, the Bills get an up, a spike in production. But that remains to be seen. I'll be here all throughout the draft and approaching the draft beyond that. So if you haven't yet, I encourage you to click subscribe and stay tuned for more content coming your way. Let's dive into this content.
Welcome to the show.
Since 1960, the Buffalo Bills have added a wide receiver via the first round of the NFL Draft 7 times. Some of those former draftees lived up to the expectations that come with being a first round draft pick, while others simply didn't. For the purpose of this video, we're going to take a look at these players based off of their draft position from highest to lowest, starting off with J.D. Hill, who was picked 4th overall in the 1971 NFL Draft. Hill spent 5 seasons with the Buffalo Bills before joining the Detroit Lions for 2 seasons in 1976 and 1977. Over 7 seasons, Hill was named to a Pro Bowl once in 1972 and finished his career with 185 receptions for 2,880 yards and 21 touchdowns. Now, I'd be completely lying to you if I told you I knew much about J.D. Hill. I mean, this guy was playing far before I was born, but this is phase 1 of this history lesson. Another time the Bills used the 4th overall selection to draft a wideout was in 2014 when they selected Sammy Watkins from Clemson. Unfortunately for Buffalo, this pick didn't pan out exactly as planned, as they picked Sammy Watkins ahead of guys like Khalil Mack, Mike Evans, Odell Beckham Jr., and Aaron Donald. Watkins wasn't horrible, but he definitely had limited production with the Bills, and it was a far cry from what you'd expect from a 4th overall selection. The Clemson alumni only spent 3 seasons with Buffalo, in which he surpassed the 1,000 yards receiving mark just once. Over a 9-year NFL career, Watkins accumulated 5,384 receiving yards with 34 touchdowns on 364 receptions. He also won a Super Bowl with the Kansas City Chiefs in 2019. He played in a total of 111 NFL games during his career, as what was a bit of a journeyman career, spending time with the Bills, Rams, Chiefs, Ravens, and the Packers. Personally, I remember I completely bought into the Sammy Watkins hype, and I even have this signed Clemson Tigers Sammy Watkins helmet. I mean, I don't know what to do with it, but it looks cool. Like I said, Sammy Watkins wasn't horrible. He had his moments in the NFL. He had over 1,000 yards receiving once in his career. Won a Super Bowl, but he really had his problem staying healthy and staying consistent. So for that reason, the Bills would love to have that number 4 overall selection back and go ahead and pick a guy like Aaron Donald. Another former Clemson Tigers wide receiver to be drafted by the Bills in the first round is Jerry Butler, who was picked by Buffalo 5th overall in 1979. Butler spent his entire NFL career with the Bills, but missed the entirety of the 1983 season due to a knee injury. He was named to a Pro Bowl once in his career in 1980, when he was the leading receiver on the Bills roster with 832 yards and 6 touchdowns. Overall, Butler played in 88 regular season games, and he brought in a total of 278 receptions for 4,300 yards and 29 touchdowns. Unfortunately, his career came to an abrupt end after he was carted off after catching a touchdown pass from Jim Kelly in 1986. I mean, to have your career end on an injury, that's gotta suck. But to do it, with your final play being a touchdown reception, that's one hell of a way to go out. The fifth receiver covered in this video is Haven Moses, who was drafted by the Bills 9th overall in 1968. Moses would go on to have a long and successful career, but his time was primarily spent with the Denver Broncos, who have honored him in their Ring of Fame. Moses had a long 11-year career in a time when big hits were more common. It was a more physical game, and that's very impressive. The Broncos Ring of Fame inductee raked up a total of 8,091 receiving yards and 57 total touchdowns in a really solid career. He was also named a Pro Bowler in 1969 with Buffalo and in 1973 with Denver. That's all for the wide receivers that were selected in the top 10 of their respective draft classes. Now we'll move on to some of the later picks in the first round by the Bills. And next up is Lee Evans, who was drafted 13th overall by the Buffalo Bills in 2004. Evans spent 8 NFL seasons with the Bills from 2004 through 2010, when he raked up 377 receptions for 5,934 yards and 43 touchdowns. During his tenure in Buffalo, Evans had 2 1,000-yard seasons, and he finished as the Bills' leading receiver on 3 separate occasions. Lee Evans currently ranks 3rd in Bills franchise history in receiving yards and receiving touchdowns, and he remains safely ranked there for the foreseeable future after the departure of Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. Lee Evans was one of the few bright spots and exciting players on some really mediocre Bills teams that were in the midst of a 17-year playoff drought, and for that, he's worthy of being a first-round pick. For the third time in this video, we'll be covering a former Clemson Tigers wide receiver to be drafted by Buffalo in the first round, as the Bills picked Perry Tuttle, 19th overall in 1982, and to put it kindly, Tuttle was an absolute bust at the NFL level. Tuttle played in a total of just 24 NFL games over 3 seasons in the National Football League, and he produced a total of 375 receiving yards with 3 touchdowns before heading north to the CFL. Tuttle went on to have success in the Canadian Football League, where he won 2 Grey Cups with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, but let's keep it real here. That is not why the Buffalo Bills drafted him in the first round. Myself, I'm happy for Tuttle because, hey, he salvaged his career. He had some success up north in Canada with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. But for the Bills, that sucks. And finally, we saved the best for last. With the 24th overall pick in the 1996 NFL Draft, the Buffalo Bills selected wide receiver Eric Moulds. And unlike Tuttle, Moulds had a terrific career with Buffalo, spending 10 seasons with the team up until 2005. And over his time with the Bills, Moulds became the second leading receiver on the team's all-time franchise history list in receptions, receiving yards, and touchdown receptions. The only guy ahead of him in all these categories is the legendary Andre Reed. Moulds had 4 seasons with over 1,000 receiving yards and finished his NFL career with 9,995 yards receiving. Moulds finished his career so close, just 5 yards away from the 10,000 yards receiving club, but hey, this guy had one heck of a career still. Awesome player for the Buffalo Bills, and getting him at pick number 24, I mean, come on, that's a steal. Somehow, Moulds finished his career with just 3 Pro Bowl appearances and participated in only 4 playoff games. Still, it doesn't take away from what was an outstanding career from Eric Moulds, who is the final of the 7 wide receivers drafted by the Buffalo Bills in the first round of the NFL Draft to date. So after taking a look at the 7 wide receivers that were drafted by the Buffalo Bills, obviously, there are some really good players who had their highs, Eric Moulds, Lee Evans, and then there are some players that didn't really have the same success, like Sammy, Watkins, and our guy Tuttle. But that's what comes with drafting a wide receiver anywhere, really. It could be in the first round, could be in a later round. They're really boom or bust prospects, and the Buffalo Bills, they're going to be looking for a little bit of that boom, a little bit of that flair to add to their offense in the upcoming 2024 NFL Draft. I am anticipating they pick a wide receiver in the first round, and it's what most people are believing as well. As I mentioned earlier, the draft is approaching. There's going to be more content like this. There's going to be more content surrounding this year's draft. So if you haven't yet, I encourage you to click subscribe. Stay tuned for more content on the Bills Bunker. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Go Bills. I'm Jake Varco. This is the Bills Bunker. Go Bills.